hosting Kranthi Paidi from PerfAcademy, who's going to have some pretty cool stuff to show us for taking JMeter and monitoring all the details from your JMeter test all the way down to your performance test. So, Kranthi, why don't you start off and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak on Redline platform. Hey, everyone. My name is Kranthi. You've been saying this. I'm a founder and mentor at PrefAcademy. I have around a decade of experience in performance testing and engineering. Started as a developer, but fell in love with performance testing and has been continuing for the past 10 years or so. I work with Sony PlayStation as a performance engineer, and in my free time, I like to mentor and guide the newcomers into the performance testing discipline. And the way the PrefAcademy was conceived was to bridge the gap between the academics and the workplace demands. So it's not, we don't concentrate specifically on tools. It's a holistic education that we try to give right from the grassroots level to the tuning level. You can follow us at the PrefAcademy. You can visit our website at www.perfacademy.com. And this webinar, we're going to talk about how do we offload the monitoring headache from JMeter engines all the way to a different technology stack. Most of you guys might have seen it, like the Grafana, the Influx, and the newest Telegraph stack. We'll see into the details. We'll see why we have to do this, what are the pros and cons, and we'll do a short demo on how it works, showing you the dashboards, etc.
Cool. And so first piece to that is how do you do it? How do you monitor all that stuff?
Yeah, the conventional monitoring stuff, if you can go to the next slide, Rich, the conventional monitoring that we have been doing till now is through either a third-party paid monitoring application or using JMeter listeners, which is actually bringing a lot of problem to the JMeter engine itself in terms of scalability, throughput, etc. Right? The technology stack that we are using right now is in fact a mix and match of open source alternatives. One of them is InfluxDB, which is a time series database, and the other is a Grafana, which is a visualization engine. And Telegraph is one of the elements in Tech Stack. If you visit influxdb.com, they have something called Tech Stack. The T is Telegraph. It acts as an agent. If you're aware of collect D and stats D, Telegraph is actually replacing that part. It's written in Golang, and it's pretty fast when compared to the other agents out there. Now, if we start with the monitoring piece itself, the backend listener was introduced in 2.13, JMeter version 2.13. It provides Graphite as a default backend listener, and it gives you the JMeter counts from the percentiles of response times to the user count, to the failure count, to the success count, etc. But the problem with that is the default metrics are not enough. And as your test plans grew in size and complexity, your JMeter engines need to have a lot of power in itself in terms of CPU and memory and JVM and etc. in order to scale up. Now, each listener that you keep adding to the JMeter brings in a computational complexity to the engine itself, as a result of which we have seen tests that scale up to 20,000 TPS, 30,000 TPS with more listeners suffering from the throughput. The JMeter engine itself was not able to deliver the throughput that we want from the test perspective. And now, going to the cloud-based executions, we have CI/CD coming up everywhere. We spin up load generators on the cloud. We automate it using Jenkins, Puppet, Maven, etc. One of the key things that every one of us need to make sure is whatever the agents that we are spinning up, the load agents in the cloud, remember all of them are virtual machines, and you need to make sure that your load generator health itself is pretty good so that it won't skew the metrics and you are after false negatives saying that, oh, I have a performance problem here, when all it was happening is you have a problem with the load generator on the cloud itself. So the cloud-based executions warrant more details. Now, there have been several implementations of this solution. One of the things that a lot of people have been using is, if you can go to the testautomationguru.com, there is a modified jar file that this guy has written, and it's pretty cool because it doesn't need you to add any listener in itself. So what he has done is he has modified the user properties file and writing the default metrics, whatever JMeter writes to the console using an HTTP API to the Influx database. Right. And it's lightweight and there is no listener needed, and it gives you more details than the default listener.
Is it a plugin?
It's a jar file. So this guy, he has modified a jar, the Apache core JMeter jar file, which is in libtxt folder. All you need to do is you need to download the version of the jar file, whether it is for 2.13 or 3.0, and back up your original jar file and go and replace this particular new jar file. But then a catch, it works only in a command line mode. It doesn't work in a GUI mode. So if you download that particular jar file and you are thinking of executing a test in GUI mode, which I suggest should never do, but if you're thinking of executing in GUI mode, that particular thing won't work.
What's next? What's still a problem, and how do we look at all the aspects?
Why it's still a problem now? If you look into the listeners that JMeter has, it has a perfmon listener. It has the backend listener configured into it. You can put a perfmon listener per instance that you want to monitor, right? You can, the name itself says perfmon listener, but you can pull in Unix metrics as well. But the more you have this particular, the complexity of the test increases exponentially when you have more number of servers in your enterprise architecture. Like if you have 8 web servers, 4 app servers, and a database server, that's 13 listeners you're adding onto the JMeter engine, trying to get the metrics from, and think of all the complexity. And you're sure to you're bound to see these differences in test metrics when you do that particular stuff, because every aggregation that JMeter engine is trying to do in the part of the listener is affecting your test throughput in some way. Now you can offset, people argue that, well, we can offset this particular thing using more beefier machine and using more load generators. You can offset it for sure, but why do you want to pay extra money for those more beefier machines when you can have a better way of doing this? And the one more thing when it comes to JMeter engine is, unlike Gatling, which is a new tool in the market, which is really good when you compare with JMeter in certain aspects, the thread model in JMeter is asynchronous. And with each listener that you're going to add to your JMeter engine and the effect that it has on its JVM utilization and thread utilization, the asynchronous threads keep waiting, and it takes a snowball effect after a certain point of time. You know, there is every chance that with more number of metrics that you're trying to add to the JMeter itself, it's going to screw up the test. Now, people might say, well, who is doing it nowadays? We have AppDynamics, we have Splunk, or we have logging solutions, we have some monitoring solution in our house. People who have that monitoring solutions in-house are pretty good, but this particular thing I have worked with, from small customers to enterprise customers, there have been many people who doesn't have enough budget to invest in those monitoring things, but want some sort of information, some high-level information, at least if they can, with going with their performance tests. So this particular model really works in small to medium scale clients where the budget is not invested for the tools, but we want some details from all the tiers to see how our performance tests performed and what went wrong in what tier.
Yeah.
And
you bring up a great point. The point being that you don't want to stick all your metrics inside of JMeter, and they probably go somewhere else today into other systems. And so even like using something like JTIG, which you can tell us more about that.
Yes, this JTIG, it's a stack that promises a lot. I'll tell you my personal experience. I mean, I right now in the workplace that I work, we have 18 different monitoring solutions, right? And we have continuous integration enabled. We run the tests using Jenkins overnight, and we come back in the morning. The Jenkins says the test is a failure. Well, at least a couple of hours after that particular email, we tend to go into at least 5 to 6 different monitoring solutions, trying to see what went wrong. Now, the problem is not all of this is stitched together. They are in silos, and in a big organization, it happens. One one department wants to use a particular solution for a particular thing, the other department wants to use a particular solution, and not all of them are stitched together, and you end up going to 5 to 6 different places to see what went wrong. With this particular JTIG stack, what it tries to do is it at least gives you a head start in the sense that which tier has gone wrong, so that you need not go to 5 different places. At least you have a head start in the sense that, all right, if my app JVM is not performing really bad, it is not performing really good, then I need to go to this particular App Dynamics or Interscope or any tool that you have which is specifically monitoring all the Java methods in it and profiling all those classes. You can go there and see what went wrong during the test time period. So this particular Telegraph and Influx and Grafana stack is trying to address that particular thing. The Telegraph is an open source. When I first checked it, it had 20 plus input and output plugins. But if you check its GitHub page, it's growing exponentially day after day. Right now, when I checked a week ago, it has 50 plus input and output plugins. Now, an input plugin is nothing but a telegraph written to read metrics from a certain technology stack. So you have an input telegraph input plugin for MySQL, an input plugin for Postgres, an input plugin for Cassandra, for Linux systems, for Windows performance counters, all these particular things. An output plugin is where your telegraph is writing the metrics back to. Now this output plugin right now supports InfluxDB and I guess Elasticsearch as well, but I'm not sure about the Elasticsearch, but InfluxDB, it works completely well. So that's an input and output plugin, what it is. An Influx database itself is a time series database, and Telegraph writes to Influx using HTTP API, and the indexing on Influx is fast. It's really fast. You can have a granularity of 1 second refresh interval and still can see the indexes coming in. But a catch here is when you try to expand the solution to have more and more metrics come in, then you will have to deal with tuning your Influx itself. And there is a lot of documentation on InfluxDB on how to partition your shards and how to have your data set up, how to have your 2 indexes or multiple indexes set up on an Amazon EC2 on your own infrastructure. But you will have to deal with it, in order to make sure that Influx is actually indexing your data really fast. And then comes Grafana. The Grafana is a visual. It's a visualization tool for time series data. It's extensible. A lot of people are writing a lot of interesting plugins. And I've seen very interesting plugins on Grafana wherein you can actually mimic an enterprise architecture using Mermaid.js. And there are a lot of templates. People are contributing to the project. You can go to the GitHub and download a ready-made JSON dashboard and use it straight away. It cuts down the effort that you need to put in while creating your own dashboards. And it supports multiple data sources. So if you have a Grafana, it supports Influx, it supports Elasticsearch, it supports other data sources as well. Now, when I install a Telegraph stack on a particular application server and have it write metrics to the Influx, and Grafana is visualizing those, I'll have my JMeter install. I'll have my JMeter write metrics to the same Influx, and I can create a correlated dashboards, which will give us what happened during the test. Now that is something that we'll see in the next demo part.
And so what is in the deployed architecture? Where are all these components?
Yeah, this is my test lab layout. I mean, when you expand this to multiple machines, it's going to look different, but here is what it is. I have a JMeter slave running out of Redline 13, and I have a Telegraph installed on it, and it's writing the JMeter slave's health. And the JMeter itself has a backend listener. We have configured a backend listener, and we are writing all the transaction metrics to Influx database. So if you see 2 metrics are coming to the Influx database, one is slaves or JMeter's health itself, the other is JMeter test metrics. And all the way up to the application server, I have a Tomcat running on an application server there. I have a Telegraph installed to listen to JVM metrics and the host resource utilization metrics, the CPU, swapping, disk IO, threads, and etc., etc. That data keeps coming into the Influx database. The same is done with PostgreSQL. And whatever the data that PostgreSQL exposes as a part of its performance schema, we can get that through Telegraph and keep writing those particular details to the InfluxDB. Now, whether you want to beef up this particular solution using all the metrics possible is a choice left to you, or whether you want to keep it lean so that you have a head start in getting the problematic tier. It's again up to you. Now, if you have a complementary, full-blown performance analytics solution which is monitoring your database and everything, you might want to keep this particular solution lean so that your CI/CD tests or JMeter tests can actually say which tier is wrong. Now, a typical enterprise layout, it gets complex, and once you have all these Telegraph things writing up loads and loads of data to Influx database, you will have to scale your Influx database accordingly, and sometimes with more and more servers coming in, more and more agents coming in, you might have to include a message queue server in between those instances and the database. But we're not going to deal with that. The basic idea of this webinar is to see how you can do this and how you can implement, and each of you who are going to implement this is going to be different. Your needs are going to be different. The traffic that you're writing into the InfluxDB is different. Your monitoring solution might be different. So as you go along, it sort of expands with your implementation. It sort of matures as a complete monitoring solution.
And the cool thing is you can kind of get started in the simple layout for some DIY. I mean, launching Influx and Grafana is just a Docker container away. And then getting Telegraph set up and Redline, we're going to demo it right now to show you how we made it a little bit easier. But it's a really great way to get started for quickly. And then as you grow, I'm assuming your app or your infrastructure will be managed by a bigger team, that you'll have to scale this out. But it's definitely, I'm sure you've seen it, it's pretty scalable.
Yeah, this is really scalable. I mean, if you see, the only bottleneck that can happen in this particular solution is any sort of limit applied, or any sort of limit that is coming in when the data is being indexed at InfluxDB. So it's again proportional to the traffic you're writing. That can be the only weak link, but that can be addressed. Looking at how your InfluxDB is organized and doing some tuning that the InfluxDB guys tell you to do. It just scales up. It scales up really easily. I mean, we have been doing it here, and it scales really good. Rich, are you still there? Hello?
Yep, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So why don't we flip to? I can hear this stuff. Why don't we demo it and we'll show this working?
Yeah,
sure.
Time? Yeah. You want to start a test on Redline 13 and then go to our dashboards.
So can you hear me now? Good. So I can take your unplug your stuff so you can hear it. So what we're going to do is, as Kranthi had walked through what that layout looks like, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a JMeter test and we're just going to spin it up on a bunch of servers. And then Kranthi's going to take it from there and walk you through the really cool stuff, which is dashboard and the data and what we can do with it. So we prepared, Kranthi prepared a JMeter test that works against, Konacar, which is an open source e-commerce platform. And it hits the landing page, sign in, login, loops, and logs out. And what we did is we added a backend listener in here to talk to our Influx instance, which on InfluxDB, you can enable it to actually also take in straight graphite protocol. So it's enabled for that. So we could talk graphite to InfluxDB. So we set that up. and then we're just having 5 users running all the time. So all we have to do is take that load test, and I think I have one right here, so we'll start a new test, JMeter test. We'll take that JMeter file we're just looking at. We'll say we want to run it on 4 or 5 servers. And then all we need to do to enable InfluxDB is check it off and specify the information for the host where InfluxDB is, so we can write to it. And what he pointed out, there's 2 sets of stats. JMeter writes to it, as well as the instance itself, the machine. And what we listen to is both all the typical stuff, CPU, process, as well as the JVM itself for JMeter. So we get quite an interesting set of stats that get sent to InfluxDB. We put it in a database called Redline 13 on InfluxDB so we can separate it out. And then all we do is click Start Test. We already started one because it takes a minute to launch all those instances, and that test is still running. It's a forever test, so until we cancel it, it's going to continue running on Redline 13. And we will see it's been running for quite a bit. It's all right. Let's see which one we have. Yep, when we started it, it's actually been running for quite a bit. And it's 5 users on 4 machines, so we have 20 users currently running. No users have died off from this perspective. And we're collecting all the stats real time in Redline, which is great, but how do I correlate this with all my other data set? And so instead of being the source for all that, because in reality, in your DevOps environment, the source is across multiple pieces. So instead of shoving all that stuff to JMeter, something like InfluxDB allows you to aggregate that data, or whatever system you're using. But this is the example here. And so we can see all the results coming through real time. If there were errors in some of that, and we see some error codes coming through, we'll trap all of that data so it'll be available. And so this is the Redline page, and we launched the JMeter test with support for InfluxDB. So now I'm going to hand it over to Kranthi.
Yep.
And let's just change presenter. There you go.
All right. Just let me know if you're listening to my screen now.
Oh, we can see it now.
All right, so I've configured a couple of dashboards here. We'll start with JMeter results dashboard. And there's one. You can see active users, users started, users ended, and what your response times look like, how is your request per second is going out, what is the average response time, throughput, whatever you're getting, what is the minimum response time, all your basic performance testing metrics that you want to actually see as a part of a basic overview of performance test. Now the way you configure this is you can, I'll quickly do a new dashboard here. So new dashboard, and go to here, add panel, and then add a graph. All the data sources that you have here are being configured, like all your Telegraph is writing the Telegraph, and Graphite has all the JMeter instance details, and Redline 13 has all our JMeter slaves or JMeter load generator health information itself. So I'll check Graphite, and then it gets all the values that's out there from the Graphite engine. I'll say select measurement, and all these particular metrics you can just go to Apache JMeter.org and see what it each means. But OK is a success transaction, KO is a failure transaction, and A is all percentiles, all transactions combined. You can just quickly select any value, and then you can see that particular value coming up over there. One of the other cool features is actually you can let me take a response time itself. Let's say 99th percentile response time for all transactions. Now I know it comes in milliseconds, right? And then I take the last value and then say it as 99th percentile. I'll go to the access and I'll tell my access saying that the unit for this is milliseconds, and then I can go to the legend. Just a moment. I can go to the legend and then have my values here, whatever the seconds, and the x-axis I can either show or hide. You can display your graphs accordingly the way you want. And you can set a threshold as well. You can say line mode level 1 is, let's say I have only 5 seconds as my first level and 8 seconds as my second level, and get my colors configured here. Now you can see, now because this particular time scale is at 10 seconds and 20 seconds, my 5 and 8 seconds are not showing up, but you can see a visual indication of what's happening over there. Let's say, for example, I've changed it to a much higher value. My first value is 20 seconds, and my second value is, let's say, 25 seconds. Which gives you a visual indication of what's happening with your transactions. Now, this is on Grafana 3.0, is that right? Rich, did we use 3.0 on Redline 13?
Sure.
Right. The 4.0 Grafana, which is still in beta phase, has the much needed alerting and threshold mechanism. I mean, alerts on the threshold mechanism. So this particular feature of highlighting your thresholds and being able to send an email to you when a particular threshold is violated is really, really helpful when it comes to your CI/CD tests. Now let's go back to the JMeter results dashboard. I'm going to ignore it. I have all the test metrics coming in. The other cool thing is you can actually see, all right, this is the window. I have pretty high response times, and you want to see what happened across the tiers. Now we have configured a number of dashboards, like what is the load generated health, what is the resource utilization on my application server itself, what are my database metrics, what are the JVM metrics, and you can link those dashboards in order to provide a drill down analysis. Now you can see this small arrow icon here. This is actually obtained by, you can select any chart. Let's say we say active users, and then you can go to edit and go to your general. You can add a drill down link. You can say add link and then start typing in. You will see whatever the dashboards that are available. You can keep the current time range, add any variable values, and say open in a new tab, and it says add link. Oh, sorry. And say close. All you have is this particular load generated health going on here. Nope, unexpected error. See, I didn't pray to the demo gods, it seems. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Rich, can you hear me? All right,
Yeah.
okay. All right, okay, that's a network problem.
Yep, Grafana is still up. The dashboards are gone. So we're going to have to call it there.
The dashboards are gone? The Grafana engine has came down. I mean, what happened with there?
Yeah. So for folks, when starting this up, we started these up as ECS instances, and the ECS it restarted the ECS instances. Don't know why.
Ah.
Well, I think you covered a good chunk of the Grafana and the pieces, how they came together. So why don't we switch, because that's what happens with live demos. Why don't we switch back a little bit to, I think you have one more slide to talk a little bit about things to watch out for.
Yeah, sure. I'll make you the presenter again. Just a moment.
Here we go. So Kranthi, what things to watch out for as you're building this out and scaling it out, besides making sure your ECS instances stay up?
Yeah. You might want to have a dedicated instances to it. Don't make them dynamic instances, and have strict policies around your shutdown mechanisms, etc. But then, other than that, scaling Influx once you have a considerable number of agents, writing metrics is an exercise in itself. So while starting this journey, having all this particular setup done for your performance test is easy, it's going to get difficult at least when you try to scale this out for at least till a point where you can have confidence that every single metric that you want to be written into Influx is getting written in a considerable amount of time. And every solution suffers from it, right? From Splunk to Elk to InfluxDB suffers, but it all boils down to how you tune your InfluxDB instance. And if you are using Windows machines to have your Telegraph agents installed, watch out for this thing. Most of the times when you actually close your JMeter or end your JMeter test and bring out another JMeter, or if your Windows server restarts, Telegraph agents need to be restarted because they are listening to a process ID which got killed, and any new Java process that comes up is not registered with Telegraph. So a possible bug, I'll look into the GitHub of Telegraph and see if there is a bug which discusses about it, but watch out for that.
And what I found is that there's a piece called Jolokia, which will monitor the JVM, specifically just JVM processes, through basically a proxy to JMX, and it'll get all the metrics out of there.
Mm-hmm.
That one, you can restart that, and it doesn't impact Telegraph. So the main one on Windows is good because it's native, but Jolokia is a little bit more generic for any Java process.
Right. Yeah, we have done the Jolokia thing on a Redline 13, right? We pulled all our JVM metrics from it, right? And number 3 is tag your transactions. If you're writing transactions from JMeter, tag it along with the user-defined property which identifies the machine. I say this because if you're trying to write metrics from at least, let's say, 5 instances, and you're running 5 users from each instance, that's a total of 25 users. So if you're writing those instances from those metrics from 5 instances and trying to see that value in your Influx, it shows as 5. So that is the maximum number of users that are run from a single instance, because each of those instances are writing to the Influx using the same metric identifier. The only way for you to get an aggregation on it is passing a user tag saying that as a machine identifier as such, and then do a query math on it by aggregating all your results. And last one we discussed, right, we are showing the alerting and threshold. This is the newest in Grafana 4.0. It's still in beta phase. I believe they're going to make it public in the second week of December. And this is going to be a really good add-on to the Grafana, given the capability of it and given the features that it has. You guys can go back and check what it is on grafana.org, but I love it a lot.
And that community has grown so much. So a couple of questions we have. So one, if so some people, especially on Redline, we have a large amount use JMeter, but we do have a growing percentage that use Gatling. Does the same thing apply to Gatling? Can you use JTAG for this?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't specifically tried writing Gatling transactions into Influx, but the other pieces should work. But looking at Gatling, I guess Gatling also supports Graphite. And with Graphite support, we can write transactions. But the coolest thing about Gatling is you can write code, actual code, and include any metrics of interest that you're getting from code using an HTTP API just by calling that API. So it should scale in theory, but in practice, we haven't implemented it. Probably we can, at PrefAcademy, we can do a small experiment along with you guys and put it up. We put as a video on YouTube. It's going to be a good exercise.
Yeah, I agree. Great. So this was really good in really seeing how you can take your metrics with JMeter and integrate it. It's a question that we get asked a lot as Redline, and I'm sure, and it gets asked in the JMeter community, as well as I'm sure other vendors get asked similar questions. So taking that data and making it available in a way that makes sense across your teams too. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
But this was really good, very detailed. Sorry we lost the ECS instances at the last minute, but I think folks got the gist.
Yeah, one more. Yeah, that's one more reason why we should have monitoring across all the tiers, right?
Yeah, and it should expand to the cloud. So for folks on the call, folks who listen in, we will make both the presentation slides as well as the templates for Grafana available early next week. So with that, we will end the webinar. Kranthi, thank you so much. And,
Thanks, Rich. Yeah.
Chat with you again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.